In this next experiment, we're going to deal with the process of transpiration. You all know that transpiration is the loss of water vapor from the aerial parts of the plant during the daytime. Okay, the keywords are daytime and water vapor. Now you have to prove that it actually occurs. So for that, I have got a plant here, a tiny little plant, and I have kept it in a bell jar, and I have left it aside for some time. After some time, you will notice that the plant will transpire, and when it transpires the water vapor will come out of the leaves and it will form a kind of droplets on the inner surface of the bell jar. Now this water vapor came out of the leaves, and when it touched the cool surface of the bell jar it condensed into water droplets, and the water, this proves that transpiration has occurred. So just to summarize, in this apparatus we have a plant kept in a bell jar, and the plant transpired to produce moisture. This moisture is found accumulating on the inner surface of the bell jar. This shows that transpiration has occurred. That's all. Start me. Okay, this experiment, you notice that I have put a piece of cobalt coir paper, on the upper surface of the leaf, and another piece on the lower surface of the leaf. The premise of this experiment is to prove that there is more transpiration from the lower surface of the leaf than from the upper surface of the leaf, because the lower surface of the leaf has more number of stomata. Now therefore what happens is, the rule is the cobalt coir paper is blue in color when it is dry, but turns pink in color when it becomes moist. So when it comes in contact with the water vapor that comes out of the leaf, the paper turns moist. I had done this a long time ago, and I noticed something very interesting. The lower surface of the leaf turned pink faster than the one on the upper surface, although both surfaces are pure pink here. It happened after a long time. So therefore, the lower surface turned pink faster earlier than the one on the upper surface, proving that there are more stomata on the lower surface. Therefore, the rate of transpiration is higher from the lower surface of the leaf than the upper surface of the leaf. The instrument you see here, come and get a close up please. The instrument that you see here is called the Gann spotometer, and this spotometer has the following parts. This part holds the plant or the twig, therefore it's called the plant holder. This is called the reservoir. This part is the tap, and this is the stem of the spotometer, and this is a big containing colored water. Now this instrument is used to measure the rate of transpiration. Here what happens is, I have got the entire pot with the water, and I have introduced the twig into the plant holder, and I have left it aside for some time. Now what happens is, the twig absorbs water and creates a suction force called transpiration pull. And due to transpiration pull, the colored water rises up and goes towards the plant. Now by finding out how much distance the water has travelled in a given time, I can measure the rate of transpiration. The main drawback of this instrument is, even though it is an instrument used to measure rate of transpiration, it actually measures rate of absorption, and we take this as almost similar because 99% of the water absorbed by a plant is lost due to transpiration. Now this is how the experiment works. This instrument teaches us the rate of transpiration. In the next experiment, I am going to prove that the colored water in this O acid of sap rises through the xylem. Now in this experiment, I have taken a beaker with some colored water. I have colored the water with a red color dye called eosin, and I have taken a small blossom plant and placed it in the water for some time. I have just left this apparatus for some time, and when I have done this for about an hour or two, later I am going to take sections of the root, stem and the leaf. When I take a section of these and observe them under the microscope, I will see that only the xylem vessels will have turned red in color, and no other part would have turned red in color. This proves that acid of sap has occurred through the xylem. If the colored water had gone through any other tissue, that tissue should also be colored, but nothing else will be colored, only the xylem will be colored. Therefore, this proves that acid of sap occurs through the xylem. Experiment I am dealing with photosynthesis. Those were the experiments on transpiration. During photosynthesis, we know the plants prepare food, and therefore we have to show the presence or absence of food at the end of every photosynthesis experiment. Now, in order to do that, I have to first remove all the starch present in the plant. So, if suppose I don't do that, I can't make out whether food is already there in the plant or the food was produced during the experimental period, and that's the purpose I have to remove the starch from the plant at the beginning of the experiment. The removal of starch is called destarching, and I can destarch a plant by keeping it in complete darkness for a period of 24 to 48 hours or 1 to 2 days, and that's what I've done. I've taken the plant and kept it in a dark chamber. You notice here, since that I have the plant hidden inside the dark chamber for 24 hours. And now if I test those leaves for the presence of starch, I will not see any starch in the plant, and such a plant is known as a destarch plant. We ask this question: what is meant by destarch plant? How do you destarch it? A plant that does not have any starch in any of its parts, especially its leaves, is known as a destarch plant. And I destarch a plant by keeping it in a dark chamber, dark room, or away from sunlight for a period of 24 to 48 hours. And that is the answer to the question. That's the first experiment. And mind you, for all photosynthesis experiment, you must not only take a plant, but you must take a destarch plant. If you don't use the word destarch in the experiment, the experiment will not be considered, because at the end of the experiment, in every experiment in photosynthesis, you test the leaf of starch. The presence of the presence of starch indicates the occurrence of photosynthesis, and the absence of starch indicates the non-occurrence of photosynthesis. So for this reason, starch acts as an indicator, and therefore all the starch in the plant has to be removed in the beginning of the experiment. And in spite of this, at the end of the experiment, the plant is able to produce a particular amount of starch. It means that that particular factor is not essential. But if the plant is unable to do so, then it proves that that particular factor is required for photosynthesis. So that is the premise on which we destarch the plant. Next experiment is to show that chlorophyll is required for photosynthesis. Now in this experiment, you will see that I have taken a special type of plant. This plant, just look at the leaves. The leaves are partially green, partially non-green in color, and such leaves are called as variegated leaves. And an example of that is a croton plant, which is in front of you. Now these plants are grown in the garden not because of their fruits or seeds they don't produce either. We look at the beautiful leaves that they have and the patterns they have, and for that reason we use them. And you know, remember one thing: the green areas in the leaf contain chlorophyll, and the non-green areas will not contain chlorophyll, and the non-green areas will not be able to contain photosynthesis by themselves. They get food from the green areas. So what I'm going to do is, I will take a plant of this type, the variegated leaf plant, and I'm going to keep it in a dark room for 24 hours, or I'm going to destarch it. And then I'm going to keep one of the leaves on a graph paper and make an outline of it. And within the outline, I'm going to mark the green and non-green areas, and then put the plant in sunlight. After some time, I take out the leaf whose outline I have made and test it for starch. And this is what I get when I test it starch. The green areas turn blue-black, and the non-green areas turn brownish in color. The green areas turn blue-black because that area could produce starch, and the non-green areas could not produce starch. Therefore, they turn brown in color. This proves that chlorophyll is required for photosynthesis because the green areas had chlorophyll, and the non-areas did not have chlorophyll. For that reason, it proves that chlorophyll is essential for photosynthesis. I have two experiments here, and this experiment, I have placed a piece of black paper on the upper surface and the lower surface of the leaf after destarching it. Before bringing the plant to sunlight, I have placed black papers on both the surfaces. You know, black paper actually prevents the sunlight from falling on this particular area of the leaf. So this area of the leaf which is covered by black paper will not get sunlight. The rest of the parts will get sunlight. So when I conduct the starch test on this after keeping the plant in sunlight for some time, I noticed that the part that was covered with the black paper turns brown in color, and the parts that are exposed to sunlight turn blue-black in color. Always remember, the coloration brown indicates the absence of starch, and the coloration blue-black indicates the presence of starch or the occurrence of photosynthesis. Now because I've covered this area with the black paper, this area was not getting sunlight, it got everything else. It's got water, it's got chlorophyll, it's got every other factor required for photosynthesis. The only factor I didn't get was sunlight, and for that particular reason we could not conduct photosynthesis. And therefore, the covered part turned brown in color, and the parts that were exposed to sunlight turned blue-black in color. This proves that sunlight is required for photosynthesis. Come to the last experiment in this group. Here notice, I have a plant here. In this plant, I have taken one of its leaves, and half of it I have introduced into a flask. And you see the powder inside is potassium hydroxide or KOH. Now KOH absorbs CO2, that is the mantra, please by heart, that KOH, potassium hydroxide, actually absorbs carbon dioxide. And I'm pretty sure that without carbon dioxide, a leaf cannot conduct photosynthesis or a plant cannot conduct photosynthesis in the absence of carbon dioxide. So for that reason, I need a substance that can absorb carbon dioxide. Now guys, I'm going to keep this plant in sunlight for some time. And then after some time, I conduct the starch test on this leaf. You see the part that was inside the flask turns brown in color. The part outside the flask turns blue-black in color. Remember, the flask inside did not get the leaf inside the flask did not get carbon dioxide because whatever KOH was present within the flask absorbed the carbon dioxide, and that part of the leaf did not get carbon dioxide. Whereas the part of the leaf that was outside the flask was exposed to the atmosphere and could get carbon dioxide. For this reason, you have to understand that the part outside could get all factors and it got the part inside got light, got water, got everything except carbon dioxide, because whatever carbon dioxide it had produced during its respiration or whatever was already present in the plasma all absorbed by KOH. So this part could not conduct photosynthesis. This experiment proves that carbon dioxide is essential for photosynthesis.